Okay, hello everybody. This is the first video on animating and getting into Unreal Editor for the game Killing Floor. And today I'm going to show you how to set up the scene. This is the most important part. Besides the animation, this really is the main. If you do anything wrong here, you're going to pay the price in the end. It's just going to make it harder. So the more you do now, the easier it's going to be in the future. So this is the weapon I'm going to put into Killing Floor. Very simple model, very simple model, simple textures. This video isn't about how to make a weapon or texture, it's just about actually animating a finished product and getting it into Killing Floor. Right, so this is the gun. As you can see, it's all one single object. If I click on it, if you see and select, you'll see there's only one object. And I've made it so I've collapsed everything, so all the UV mapping is all integrated. If I select element, I can select piece by piece which parts we're going to attach in the future. We're not going to do that yet. We're going to do that after we've put it in with the hand scene, so you can see how it all fits together. Okay, and here's the hands I've already prepared. I've just put them in pretty much the state I want them to be in when I import the weapon. As you can see, there's no other weapons. This here is the tip bone. I'll explain that later. But this one you shouldn't really move because it tells you where the center of screen is. You'll notice we're in iron sight camera mode, and that's dead center. So that's going to help us when we put the weapon in, how to the scale and the position of how we want it facing. Okay, right, so as I said, I'm not going to animate anything today. All we're going to do is set the scene up and get everything right before we start animating, so that we know where we are. Okay, so I'm going to merge in. So I'm going to go to import. I'm going to merge the base weapon. Select object 001. And as you can see, it's very large compared to how we want it, so I'm going to rescale it. And there's a very important thing to do after this, after you've rescaled it, otherwise it could really mess up your scene. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to overall scale. It's roughly about there. I'm going to rotate it so it's facing the right direction. Should be good. Okay, now I'm going to position it near the hands. I'm not going to link anything yet. Just going to get it roughly to where we want it. Okay, looks pretty good, decent size. Okay, right, before you do anything else, make sure your weapon's selected and go to hierarchy, and then where it says reset, scale and transform. It's very important you do this, because if you don't, when you link the hands are going to take on the rescaling, so you're going to end up rescaling the hands, which you don't want to do. So if you reset this now, it saves a hell of a lot of problems later. Okay, Now we've got the gun. I'm going to keep it that size. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It fits in quite well. Okay. Right. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the textures for the scene, because this is very important for when you import it into Unreal. What textures you import and on what number skin they import to. So at the moment, if you look at the weapon, if you go to modify, go to element and select everything, you'll see the ID is set at nothing. There isn't an ID set. If you look at the hands, or we'll look at the new sleeves, that's very important. We'll pop down to here. You'll get a pop-up come up. You just OK it. We'll go to element. Yes. You'll see it's already selected. That's set as ID 1. We're going to keep that as is. We're going to select the weapon again. Go to element. It's all selected. We're going to set that ID 2. So that separates the two textures. Right, so now we're going to go to rendering, material editor, compact material editor. We're going to pick a new empty. There you go. That'll do. And we're going to select a multi sub-object texture. Discard old material. Okay. We're going to set the number at 2, because we want one texture for the weapon and one for the hands. Okay. So ID 1 is going to be the arms. ID 2 is going to be the gun. Okay. For the arms texture, go into diffuse, bitmap. And I've already got the hands texture from Killing Floor ready, so I can pop that in. And if you hit assign material to selection and then show standard mapping viewport, it should show the textures, but I'll show you what it isn't showing in a moment. Right, back to the default, and for the gun we're going to select the texture I made, which is this one. Very simple texture. Assign. Now you should see that. Okay. The moment, the reason you can't see the texture is because I've got them frozen. So I'm going to unfreeze all. There's new hands and new sleeves. Very important, because you'll see those later. Okay, that's better. Select new hands. There you go. Now you've got your texture. So you can see where you're going. So when we import this in, that will be skin 0 and that will be skins 1. But we'll explain that later. Okay. So that's the textures out of the way. And we've rescaled our gun. Now we want to start linking things. Okay. At the end of each hand, you'll find an IK target. This is what we're going to link to the gun, but we're not going to do that yet, because we're going to break the gun down into its separate pieces. Okay, so at the moment it's all one unit. So I'm going to select the gun, select the element. We want this part which is the slide. We're also going to select the sights so they separate with the slide, and we're going to go detach, and then we're going to change this to slide. Okay, make sure detach to element is unticked and detach as clone is unticked, so then this separates it as a separate item. Okay, the trigger, detach. Okay, and then the magazine. Just call that mag. Okay. So now, if you select the gun, we're actually going to rename this from object 1 to gun. One thing, never tab. When you type in here, never tab out, because it leaves a blank space. And when you import into Unreal, if you're looking for a bone name, it won't give you the correct bone name because there'll be a hidden space there, and then you're going to end up with problems. So just either come out using mouse or just press enter. It's up to you. Okay, so now we've got our gun. If we move this, the slide doesn't move with it because it's all now detached. The trigger stays where it is, the magazine stays where it is. Okay, so undo that move. Okay, and what we're going to do, we're going to set the pivot points on each item to how we want them, because each one's going to have a separate pivot. So I'm going to just expand this screen. Actually, I'm going to do it from the back. I'm going to expand this. Okay. So I'm going to select the trigger. I'm going to go to hierarchy again and effect pivot only. First thing, center to object. Okay. Now to test how it's going to move, just do some movements. So that's not really how the trigger should move. So I'm going to go effect pivot again, and then I'm going to move the pivot to here and select effect pivot only. So now when you move it, you get a more realistic movement. Okay. Undo rotate. Okay, we're going to do the same with the magazine. Effect pivot only. See the pivot's over there because it's taking the pivot from the original weapon. So now we're going to center to object. But now, because we want this magazine to come out at an angle to make it easier on ourselves, I'm going to rotate the pivot to there. So now when I want to animate the just makes it easier. You can see things as they are. Okay, slide, effect pivot only, center to object. Doesn't really matter which, because it's only it ever goes backwards and forwards. So just test that. Yeah. Okay. Right. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to link our objects back to our gun. We're not going to attach them. We're going to link them. And that's by using select and link. So click on that, and then holding the left button down on your item, so we'll say the slide, it will give you a line. We're going to link it back to the gun. The gun should flash if it's been linked correctly. Okay. Do the same with the trigger. Hold the left button down to the gun, and then again with the magazine. Okay. So now, make sure you unselect that by selecting Select Object. Okay, we'll come back out of the screen. Now, if we move the gun, everything should move with it. It's all linked. There's no skinning involved, no rigging. What we've done, we've linked everything. Now when we export this, excuse me, when we export this and import it into Unreal, it will pick these up as bones because they've got a central hierarchy, which is the gun. Okay. I'm going to unhide something here, which is very important. I'm going to unhide the root bone. You may have heard this before about central hierarchy with animated objects. Everything which needs to be linked needs to be to one singular item. So in this case, the shoulders are linked to the root bone. The arms and the forearms are linked to the shoulders, which therefore are linked to the root bone. So our root bone is our central hierarchy in this case. So I'm now going to link the gun to the root bone. So now everything is linked. If we move the gun, we can still move the gun independently. We can still move the slide independently. So we move it there, and then we move the gun, the slide will stay where it is. So I'll explain that a bit more when we're actually animating. Okay, that's where we are. Just to make sure it's linked properly, I'm going to go to Properties. Yep, the parent is root bone, so it's connected correctly. Okay. Now we're going to link the hands to the gun. So when we move the gun, the hands move. So this just makes it easier because you can animate the gun rather than having them manually move the hands. Everything moves together flawlessly and seamlessly. It just makes it so much easier. So what we're going to do, we're going to select this IK target, which is for the left arm, and we're going to go to the motion tab. Okay, as you can see, there's nothing for it to link to. This is your animation layers. You've got your base pose, which controls the right arm, and you've got bolting, which controls the left arm. No, the right arm. Okay, so we're in left arm IK target. We want to add a link. We're going to link it to the gun. Okay, and select that. So now when you move the gun, the hand moves with it. It makes it so much easier for animating. So now we're going to do the same for the right hand. As you can see, we haven't got anywhere to link it, so you select bolting, add link, and links it to the gun. So now when we move the gun, both hands move. So now we can do our animations, we can move it whichever way we want. It just makes life so much easier. Okay. I'm going to save this as my 9mm Rigmaster. Excuse me. Okay. Just got all our pieces of the weapon linked to the gun. We've got our hands linked to the gun. Now we want to link the tip bone. Right. What you don't want to do is move it left or right or up or down, if you can help it, because in iron sight camera mode, this is the centre of screen for your weapon. So your barrel, this is the one what in coding is used for the muzzle flash, but in here it's also used for estimating exactly where the centre of screen is. So it's a very, very useful tool. But you'll notice at this precise moment you can't move it. It's unmovable. It's because it's locked. So you need to go to hierarchy. No. Yeah, hierarchy IK. Link info. I apologise. Okay, it's locked to move in, rotating, and scaling. So we're going to keep the scale locked. We're going to keep the rotation locked, but we're going to unlock being able to move. Actually, we'll lock it on the Y and we'll lock it on the Z, so we can still move it backwards or forwards, which is exactly what we want to do, because then that keeps our centre of screen. And if you look here, you can see our gun isn't centered on. So I'm going to select the gun. I'm going to rotate it. So now when you see, this will be your iron sight camera in the game. We can change this later if we're not happy with it, because how it looks here will look different in the game. So we're going to keep that as is. Right, we're going to select the tip bone and we're going to move it so it's just touching the gun. And this is your best view for seeing it, because you want the muzzle flash to come from the gun, not away from the gun. Right, and now we're going to link this bone to the gun. So now we'll move the gun. The muzzle bone moves seamlessly with the gun. So if you've got a muzzle flash, it'll always stay with the gun instead of the muzzle flash staying where it is and then the gun moving up. Yeah, it just looks ridiculous. So okay, that's pretty much this part covered. As you've seen, all set up, your gun's in the right position. You can change the camera to hip camera mode, and that's roughly what it's going to look like. As I said, it looks different here than what it does actually in game. You wait until you see it in game before you make any decisions on where you want to move it to. Okay, that's your gun set up. Okay, I'm going to save that and wait for the next video.